रिफ्रेश करें क्या? Good morning, dears, and welcome to Super Coaching of UPSC by Textbook Platform. Today we meet here to discuss one of the very important topic of Indian economy, that is economic growth and development. Economic growth and development. So we will try to understand that what is the meaning of economic growth. So economic growth refers to, as I always said, that in economics deals with the wealth, and in economics production is wealth, and there is production of two things only. One is goods and other is services. So when we talk about the economic growth is nothing but the value of production over a period of time. If there is increase in the production capacity of the economy, we can say that economic growth is taking place. So in other words, we can say that economic growth is defined as increase in the production of goods and services from one period to another. Now, let me summarize once again. As I said that economics is science of wealth, and in economics wealth is nothing but the production, and there is production of two things only. One is goods and other is services. So we can say that when there is increase in the production capacity of goods and services, we can say that economic growth is taking place. So it is all about the production capacity or increase in production capacity from one period to another period. That is nothing but economic growth. In other words, it can be defined as process in which there is increase in real GDP and per capita income. And we will try to understand that what is the meaning of real GDP. Real GDP or per capita income. Yesterday we discussed concept of GDP. Now we will try to understand that what is the meaning of real GDP. As I said yesterday, that GDP is nothing but the total value of goods and services produced in a definite period, that is a financial year. So that means that is nothing but the total production of goods and services or monetary value of goods and services produced in a definite time period. So suppose that in 2022 the production was 100 and the prices was 10. So the value of GDP in 2022 was 1000. When what happened in 2023, suppose the production capacity is 100 only, but the production in prices increase from 10 to 15, so our GDP increased to 1500, and that is nothing but nominal GDP. That is nothing but nominal GDP, because what is wealth is nothing but the production. So there, when there is going to be increase in production capacity or increase in the production level, then only we can say that economic growth is taking place. But in our case, in 2022 the production was 100, in 2023 the production is 100, but the value of GDP has increased from 1000 to 1500, and that is not the real GDP. In order to get the real GDP, we will take the another example. Suppose that in 2022 the value production was 100 units and prices was 10 rupees. In 2023, suppose the production increased to 150 and the prices are only 10. So the value of GDP is going to be 1500 in comparison to 1000. So this is nothing but the real GDP. Real GDP. So in order to get the value of real GDP, we have to nullify the impact of increase in prices. So that is the meaning of real GDP, or that is meaning of growth. Because when the production capacity of the economy is increasing, then only the growth in the economy is taking place. So this is about the economic growth. And historically, economic growth is measured in the form of real GDP and real GNP. So this is about the economic growth. Now we will proceed further and we will try to understand that what is importance of economic growth. And importance of economic growth can be understood with the given figure. What I said, that economic growth is nothing but increase in production capacity. Production capacity. If production capacity is increasing, what is going to be with the increase in production capacity? In order to produce, the employer has to employ more employees. So there is going to be increase in employment. At the same time, when there is increase in production capacity, that means the employer is going to employ more employees, and in that case the pupils are going to get the income, and on the income pupils has to give the personal income tax. So the tax revenue of the government is going to increase. And not only this, when the pupils income is going to increase because of increase in employment rate, what is going to be, the pupils are going to consume more, and because of that, when there is increase in employment, there is, as a result, there is going to be fall in unemployment. At the same time, when there is going to be increase in tax revenue of the government, if the government is going to increase the tax revenue, and tax revenue is going to increase because of PIT, personal income tax, as well as because the companies are going to produce more, so the profit of companies is also going to increase, so that the tax liability of the companies are also going to increase. So CIT, corporate income tax, is also going to increase. Because of that, tax revenue is going to increase. And when there is going to be increase in tax revenue, that means the government will be in position to increase the spending on public services. Similarly, when there is going to be increase in consumption pattern of the society, it is going to encourage, because increase in consumption pattern is going to increase the aggregate demand in the economy. Aggregate demand means total demand of the economy. When there is going to be increase in total demand of the economy, that means it is going to motivate the producer or the entrepreneur to increase the investment. And when there is going to be increase in investment, that is, it is going to increase the production capacity in the economy, and further the economic growth in the economy is going to increase. So this is nothing but a virtual cycle. So what is going to be, as I said, that economic growth is increase in the production capacity of economy, and when the economy is witnessing economic growth, definitely it is going to increase the employment rate in the economy, it is going to increase the tax revenue for the government. At the same time, it is also going to increase the consumption expenditure of the economy. As a result, because of increase in employment, it is going to reduce the unemployment rate in the economy, and because of increase in tax revenue, that is going to increase the public expenditure on social services. Not only this, because of increase in consumption pattern, it is going to lead increase in aggregate demand. As a result, it is going to motivate the producer or entrepreneur to encourage the investment. So this is a virtual cycle. So that is the importance of economic growth. Now we will proceed further and we will try to understand our another concept, and that is economic development. What is the meaning of economic development and how economic development is different from economic growth? Let me tell you that up to 1950 or 1960, economists used to use economic growth and economic development interchangeably. I mean to say that up to 1960 or 1950, that economist was using the word economic growth and economic development interchangeably. They were not differentiating between economic growth and economic development. What happened when we talk about the economic development? Economic development refers to the process. Economic development refers to the process in which economic growth is accompanied with improvement in the welfare of the people. So I can say that economic growth is necessary condition but not sufficient condition for the economic development. In order to have the economic development, economic growth has to be converted into socio-economic changes, meaning there should not only be change in the national income, change in the per capita income, change in the real GDP or change in the real GNP, but at the same time there should be improvement in social indicators, like there should be good health facility, there should be good physical infrastructure, there should be good opportunity for the education. When this both are coupled with together, that process is known as economic development. That's why I said that economic growth is just a necessary condition but not a sufficient condition for economic development. Because without economic growth, there can never be economic development. Because in order to have economic development, government need to have the revenue through which government can make the provisions for the downtrodden. In order to health, in order to education, in order to physical infrastructure, in order to poverty, in order to unemployment. So this is nothing but when economic growth is going to coupled with distributive justice, then it is automatically going to convert as economic development. So there is the need of role of the government, and we are the welfare state. India as a welfare state. So Indian government need to convert the higher rate of economic growth into economic development. And that can be done through distributive justice. That can be done through different policies and different programs which is going to address the problems of downtrodden. That is the meaning of economic development. So that in case of economic development, there should be increase in production as well as increase in the welfare of the society. We can say that economic development refers to progressive change in socio-economic structure of the economy. And socio-economic structure refers to improvement in health facility, improvement in education facility, improvement in physical infrastructure, reduction in poverty, reduction in unemployment, etc. So when economic growth is going to be coupled with distributive justice, with the role of the government, then definitely economic growth is going to convert into economic development. So we can say that economic growth is just a mean to achieve the end that is known as economic development. Now, when we proceed further, now we are going to discuss that what is differences between economic growth and development. What are the differences between economic growth and development? So, one difference we can do on the basis of definition only, that economic growth is the value of final goods and services produced in an economy over a period of time. Whereas economic development is the improvement in socio-economic parameters of the economy which raises the living standard of the economy. Another difference, we can say that economic growth is a short-term phenomena, whereas economic development is a long-term phenomena. In other terms or other difference, we can say that economic growth is a quantitative aspect, whereas economic development is a quantitative as well as qualitative aspect. Because what is economic growth? What is economic growth? Is nothing but increase in production capacity of the economy. Suppose in 2022 we were producing 100 units, and in 2023 if we increase from 100 to 106 units, so that is nothing but economic growth. So it is nothing but quantitative, we can measure it, it is nothing but 6%. Whereas economic development, it is quantitative as well as qualitative, because we can say that there is improvement in health facility. But how much improvement is there? We cannot exactly measure it. We can say that there is reduction in poverty, which can be measured. We can say that there is increase in physical infrastructure. We can say that there is increase in SDI. But how much increase? We cannot measure exactly. So economic development is quantitative as well as qualitative aspect. Another difference we can make that as I said that economic growth is just a mean, whereas economic development is end in itself. And again, when we talk about another difference, we can say that economic growth can be achieved without economic development, but economic development can seldom be achieved without economic growth. As I said that economic growth is necessary condition but not sufficient. Necessary means it is very important, because when there will be increase in production capacity, then only government is going to have the tax revenue, then only government can make expenditure on health facility, then only government can make a investment on education facility, physical infrastructure, roads, bridges, hospitals. Okay, then only government can take the measures to reduce the poverty, then only government can take the measures. So that means it is very much necessary to have economic growth in order to have the economic development. But if there is disparity between the rich and poor and the economy is growing, then we can say that there is economic growth but economic development is not taking place. Like in case of Indian economy is one of the highest growing economy, but at the same time there is economic disparity in the society, meaning there is people in India who is in the top rich pupils of the world. At the same time, there are people in the society who are not able to have 2 square of meal. So that means that economic growth can be achieved without economic development. And there is need to have the distributive justice to convert economic growth into economic development. Now, when we proceed further and we try to understand the other differences, we can say that economic growth is a narrow concept. What it means? That means it measures only one aspect of economy, that is increase in production capacity. But economic development is broader concept or multidimensional concept, because it not only takes into account whether there is increase in the production capacity, at the same time it also takes into account whether there is increase in the socio economic parameters or not. Therefore it is multidimensional. Not only this, the economic growth is the concern of developed country, because in case of developed country there is saturation, because they exploited their resources, and because of that their economic growth is not too much high. Whereas in case of developing country, the concern is economic development, because the developing countries are growing rapidly, but they are not able to inculcate the fruits of economic development, fruits of economic growth from top to bottom. That is nothing but economic development. So for growing economy, the concern is economic development. And another difference, we can say that economic growth is measured in the form of real GDP, real GNP, or per capita income. Whereas economic development can be measured with the concept of green GDP, with the concept of human development index, with the concept of gender inequality index, with the concept of gender development index, with the concept of gross happiness index, etc. Another difference we can make, that is, the economic growth reflects only national income or per capita income, whereas economic development refers to positive progress made by the society. So these were the differences between economic growth and economic development. Now we are going to proceed further. Now we are going to discuss that what are the pillars of economic development. What are the pillars of economic development? There are 5 pillars of economic development, because as I said that when economic growth is accompanied with the improvement in socio-economic indicators, then only economic growth can be converted into economic development. And for that there are 5 pillars on which government has to work to improve, and that is nothing but government has to improve the health facility, government has to improve the education facility in the economy, government has to uh, improve the amenities, that may be in form of physical infrastructure, that may be in the form of other amenities, and government has to focus on environment. That means it should not be that we are going to have the economic growth at the cost of environment, like it has been done in case of developed country. So we have to work, that is known as sustainable development, and government has to work on IT and transportations as well. So when government is going to improve the social infrastructure with respect to economic indicators, improvement in economic indicators, then only economic development in the economy is going to take place. Now we are going to proceed further, and we are going to discuss the next concept. And next concept is, we are going to deal with the importance of economic development. So when we talk about the importance of economic development, that why and how economic development is important. As I said that it is most important to have the distributive justice, because we are the welfare state, and it is the duty of the government to convert economic growth into economic development in order to have the welfare state, because it is in our directive principles of state policy that we have to make the welfare state. So most important importance of economic development is to have the distributive justice, so that the fruits of economic growth can be percolated from top to bottom, so that the economic disparity between the rich and poor can be minimized. Okay, so this is the most important importance of economic development. But in other terms we can say that economic development boosts the country's overall prosperity and standard of living, because as I said that economic development must be accompanied with socio-economic indicator, health facility, education facility, physical infrastructure. That's why when this is going to increase, the living standards of the pupil is going to increase. When the living standard of the pupil is going to increase, we can say that welfare state is going to be realized. Okay, not only this, it creates more opportunity for the pupil and reduce the unemployment, because as I said that economic growth is necessary condition. Economic growth is necessary condition for economic development. Economic development. So, and in order to have the economic growth, there is need to have increase in production capacity. Production has to be increased, and when we need to increase the production, the employer has to employ more employees, so employment will increase. Employment will increase. When there will be increase in employment, what will be there? That means pupils are going to have the purchasing power, or income of the pupils are going to increase. If the income of the pupils are going to increase, it is going to increase their consumption pattern. If the consumption pattern is going to increase, it is going to increase their aggregate demand. When aggregate demand is going to increase, when aggregate demand is going to increase, it is going to increase the production, and it is going to increase the economic growth. So from here only employment is going to increase. If the employment is going to increase, that means unemployment rate is going to reduce, and that means economic disparity is going to reduce, and living standard of the pupil is going to increase. Not only this, increased economic development means more revenue in the hands of the government, because pupils income is going to increase. So pupils have to give the PCI, personal income tax, on their income. At the same time, production is going to increase, so the profit of company is going to increase, so they have to give the corporate income tax. They have to give the corporate income tax. Because of that, tax revenue of the government is going to increase. When tax revenue of the government is going to increase, the government will be in position to increase the expenditure on social services, like health facility, like education facility, like physical infrastructure, etc. So this is also important. Economic development contribute in reducing the poverty and income inequality. We already discussed that how it is going to reduce the poverty and uh, income inequality. The economic development ensures the long term and sustainable growth of the country, because as I said that economic growth, there is 5 pillars of economic development, and one of them is environment. So our focus should be on the development, but or on the economic growth, but it should not be at the cost of environment. Okay, so that is known as sustainable development, and that is our focus is also on that. We should have to grow, but it's the growth should not be at the cost of environment, and that is nothing but sustainable development. Not only this, when we talk about, it focuses on well-being of the including the wealth, we discussed already, developing various sectors. Okay, balanced and diversified growth, that means what is going to be in case of India, that most of the pupils are employed in the service sector, or agriculture seems to be employed in agriculture sector, and pupils are also involved in service sector, and that the unemployment, the problem of unemployment can be addressed when there is going to be growth of manufacturing sector or secondary sector, because in service sector highly skilled pupils can be employed, but in case of manufacturing or secondary sector, that skilled as well as semi skilled or unskilled pupils can also be employed. So in order to increase the employment, or in order to increase the employment in the country, there is need to grow the manufacturing sector. And in case of India, manufacturing sector is not too much developed. So when there is going to be economic growth, and because of economic growth, and we are focusing on manufacturing sector, that's why there is focus on lot many schemes, like Make in India, okay, and mudra schemes, etc. So that is just to motivate the manufacturing sector, or just to promote the manufacturing sector, so that there can be balanced growth. Not only this, economic development addresses social issues like poverty, hunger, and gender inequality. So we discussed this also, that it will be when fruits of economic growth is going to be inculcated from top to bottom, at the same time in genders as well. That means we are going to give the opportunities in the employment for the females also. Then there is going to be reduction in gender disparity as well, and that is nothing but economic development. Now we will focus further, and when we proceed further, we are going to discuss that what are the issues in case of economic development. We are going to proceed further, and we are going to discuss that what are the issues in case of India with respect to economic development. Okay, what are the issues? Why India is not witnessing economic development? Because we are one of the highest growing economy in the world. Irrespective of that, our economic growth rate, economic development is not satisfactory, meaning there is disparity, or large disparity, especially economic disparity between rich and poor. Meaning, because of economic growth, the rich are getting richer, and the poor are becoming more poor. So we are going to discuss that why, irrespective of having the highest economic growth rate in the world, we are not able to convert the fruits of economic growth to the economic development. And these are because of illiteracies, because most of the population, Indian population, is dependent on agriculture, and agriculture sector has the lacunas to grow. That means it cannot be grow too much. At the same time, the manufacturing sector is not promoted well, and service sector is promoted, but in case of service sector, only skilled people can be employed. Only skilled pupils can be employed, and it is because of illiteracy only. It is only because of the illiteracy, and because of illiteracy, there is disguised unemployment in agriculture. Disguised unemployment means people seems to be employed in the economic activity, but their contribution in the production is zero. That is nothing but disguised unemployment. So in case of agriculture, there is disguised unemployment. In case of manufacturing, it is not well promoted. And in case of service sector, we can only employ to the skilled people. And there is illiteracy. That's why there cannot be too much employment in service sector. What are the other lacunas which are responsible for lack of economic development irrespective of highest economic growth? That is poverty. And unemployment and poverty is correlated with each other, because when you will not be employed, how you will have the money to fulfill your expenses? Then definitely the people or society is going to be poor. Similarly, other lacuna is declining growth rate. Because of COVID, our growth rate has declined, and that is also the reason for not converting economic growth into economic development. Not only this, inadequate growth of the secondary sector, I already discussed, and this is because of inverted tax structure. One of the reason for that is inverted tax structure. We will discuss that what is the reason for that. Our manufacturing sector, which can absorb unemployment, is not promoted well. That is inadequate growth of manufacturing sector, which is also responsible for lack of economic development in the country. Similarly, dependence of agriculture sector on monsoon. As I said that more than 60% nationals are dependent or employed in agriculture, and agriculture itself is dependent on monsoon. Sometimes there is drought and sometimes there is flood. So because of that, pupils do not have the purchasing power, and when pupils are not having the purchasing power, it is not going to make the increase in the aggregate demand, and when aggregate demand is not going to increase, the production is not going to increase. When the production is not going to increase, the employer is not going to employ more employees. Then economic growth rate is going to reduce. Then automatically economic development is not going to take place. Not only this, as I said, there is high rate of unemployment. At the same time, there is also the phenomena of unemployment. There is also the phenomena of unemployment as well as underemployment. What is the meaning of underemployment? That the meaning of underemployment is PhD holder is doing the job of clerk. That is the example of underemployment. So much high qualification, but that individual is forced to do the clerical job. That is nothing but it is not going to give the satisfaction, job satisfaction to the individual, and that is nothing but underemployment. So there is need to convert fruits of economic growth into economic development with the distributive justice, and there is role of the government to make steps to ensure distributive justice. And this is all about our today's session. Today we finish here only. Thank you very much, dears. Thanks a lot.